Hello everybody, my name is Andrew McGahan and I have 2 hours spare here in college, so I decided Cage Contender 15, we've had a little bit of a fallout. They have a show on December 1st and of course they have their February show in Dublin next year, so I just thought we should see what sort of fights we could line up in the Cage Contender future. Now obviously we're coming off the back of Cage Contender 15 and it was a massive night for local fighters. Conor "Da Crook" Cook defeated Ross the Gladiator Ponton, obviously, and he really did look a lot better than his fight against John Michael Shield. Both of these guys have lost to JMS, but Cook really did look a little bit clueless when it came to the ground. Not clueless as such, sorry, but Shield did submit him with relative ease, and Cook actually told me in a post-fight interview that 6 months ago he would have tapped to the rear naked choke that Ross Ponton had on him, and it was only for the fact that he knew what was at stake, how hard he had trained, and how he knew he could actually beat Ross if he got out of that rear naked choke. The main reasons why he didn't give up and tap. Of course, we have a new welterweight interim champion, and it is Arnie the Ice Viking Isaacson. He defeated Wayne Murray, and a lot of people thought Murray was going to give Arnie trouble standing up, yet it was Arnie who finished Murray, looking absolutely devastating, and he was suffering from food poisoning, which is something really you have to consider for a fighter. A lot of fighters have pulled out food poisoning the day or two before a fight. Arnie just battled on. The only problem this brings us now is that Arnie is the interim champion, and of course his teammate Cathal Pendred is the regular champion. Now, a lot of people are saying that Cathal has his sights set on the welterweight belt in Cage Warriors, but that's not saying that he devalues his Cage Contender belt, because if it wasn't for Cage Contender he wouldn't be such a high profile name in the sport in Ireland. So personally I think Cathal will fight again on Cage Contender. Chris Fields on the other hand, I really hope we get to see the matchup that has been long rumoured in Ireland about Chris fighting Dean Lister, and that would be such a massive test for Chris Fields. I think that could be a great fight for him, his last fight before maybe venturing into the UFC. I think that is something that we should definitely get excited for. Hopefully if the stars align we will be able to see it in late 2013. But just going back to Cathal Pendred, I know that Cage Contender has a policy of fighters fighting UFC veterans, etc. I think Cathal Pendred would beat Marcus Davis quite easily. The guy I would really love to see Cathal Pendred fight, and I don't know how possible it is. I don't know what his mental state is, whether Ferguson Sports could pull this off. It'd be the biggest UFC vet that they've had, in my opinion, fight on any of their cards. It would be Caro Parisian. Now obviously Caro was one of the biggest talents in the welterweight division in the UFC, but unfortunately massive anxiety problems, massive nerves before he got into fighting, and he really does need to step away from the sport, and he has done 2 or 3 times to get his mental affairs in order. And he recently did fight in a small promotion in the US, and he literally just went in and said, I want to get back focusing on my fighting career and go back to dropping guys on their heads. Caro has the best judo I have ever seen in MMA, and if we're talking about judo in relation to MMA, Cage Contender 15 of course, Richard Gorey, a Cage Contender signed fighter under the Ferguson Sports Group, he is one of the most exciting fighters in Ireland. His demolition of Kieran Davern, and Gorey is obviously something to go by. Gorey always takes, let's say, strong fights, okay? He fought Ronan McKay at welterweight. He fought Ronan McKay at middleweight, and Ronan is a middleweight, Richard is a welterweight. So Ronan had his regular weight cut, Richard just did nothing and he still came in light. So it was going to be a tough fight, and you saw in the fight, I spoke to Richard post-fight and he gassed. So he told me that he just didn't know what went wrong. He's off the back of 3 training camps and he still managed to gas. So I'm not really too sure what happened there. Maybe McKay's strength and power was just a little bit too much for the welterweight, and it's just a testament to him that he has had guys pull out on him recently and in the past, so it just shows that he wants to fight. He will fight anyone at any available weight, and I think that is something that should be heralded. I personally did think he could touch Pendred, but it seems that Pendred has gone too far forward at this stage now. His recent wins have just been absolutely stunning over Belkaiden when they fought back here in Dublin on Cage Warriors, and most recently against Bruno Cavallo. And hopefully Cahill will get his chance for the welterweight belt here on New Year's Eve. Cage Warriors show in the Helix, so fingers crossed. But if we can do a couple of dream matchmaking scenarios here, obviously I've said Lister and I've said Parisian. Now if we look from an Irish point of view, I did speak to Norman Park and he said he's not going to confirm, but it is unlikely he will be defending his belt on Cage Contender again. So we're going to need a new lightweight champion. Maybe something to do with the Fight Stars tournament going on in December. We might see a bit of talent who could potentially challenge for the Cage Contender belt early next year. And Paul McVeigh, of course, now dropping to flyweight to compete in Cage Warriors on December 8th. So hopefully McVeigh, it doesn't look like he will be defending his title on Cage Warriors anytime soon. So it could be a bad time ahead for Cage Contender, depending on how you look at it. McVeigh is going. Park, Pendred and Fields all in danger of leaving their titles behind. Now, this is only a testament to Cage Contender, really, because they have brought these fighters up, given them hard fights and progressed their careers. So obviously John Ferguson is going to be nothing but proud that these fighters have come from his show, but also it leaves a bit of a gap in the fighter skill level, shall we say, because John Michael Shield, who is now signed for Cage Warriors, a lot of people thought he was going to be the next middleweight champion after Chris Fields left. But is Conor Cook really ready for it? Is Conor Cook ready to fight someone like Dean Lister? I don't think so. I think Chris Fields is ready to fight Dean Lister and beat Dean Lister, but I don't see someone like Conor Cook being ready for something like that yet, which kind of leaves the middleweight division a little scarce in Ireland, especially if Chris Fields was to go full-time to Cage Warriors, as it were. But as far as we know, his contract allows him to defend his Cage Contender belt, assuming it doesn't get in the way with Cage Warrior events. So here's hoping that we do get to see that matchup. But I know I keep saying this. I think this would be a very good fight. If John Redmond, in the similar mold as Richard Gorey, just takes very, very hard fights. This guy is on a bit of a bad run, starting with his loss at Fields at Cage Contender a while ago. But I just think he is such a hard guy to fight against. He's such good stand-up, and he's no slouch on the ground either. I think him against Gorey at welterweight or even at middleweight would be an absolutely brilliant fight, a barn burner, and definitely one that if John Ferguson is listening, I hope he does consider for the February card in the National Basketball Arena in Dublin. And if we just go back on a final note to Cage Contender 15, what a 7-day period that was for Alan Philpott. He comes out in front of a massive support for him in his rubber match with Ricky Edgeworth. An absolutely high-paced match that Philpott came out the victor, securing a beautiful submission in round 1. He then gets the call to fight on Cage Warriors 7 days later against local hometown guy Chris Edwards, and Philpott goes out there and shows that he is absolutely one to watch for the future. I would be worried that he's going to get signed by Cage Warriors, so hopefully we get to see a couple more good fights on Cage Contender before he moves on. But really, it is all there for this young man. He is such an amazing talent. He bloodied up Chris Edwards very, very bad, hit some big elbows, and really, when it comes down to it, I know a lot of guys don't like the use of elbows in the sport, but they are so effective when done right. There are a lot of guys that use elbows properly, and there are a lot of guys that implement them from the crucifix position, etc., and it just absolutely enables, or disables your opponent, I should say. Edwards, massive cut, and when you have blood pouring down your face, you're going to be a little bit worried, and Philpott just swarmed all over him and ended up finishing him completely. This was just a little bit of a project to kill time. I have the facilities available to do stuff like this in the college, so any feedback, let me have it. Hopefully I will be able to get a few interviews done over the next couple of weeks leading up to Christmas and get a couple of good stuff out. And in final, I would just like to say thank you very much to the guys at Severe MMA for giving me the opportunity to get my interviews on a video format, and thank you very much to anybody who has watched those interviews over the last couple of weeks, because for me personally in college, this is excellent experience for me that I can put on my CV, that I have thousands and thousands of views on YouTube. When I last checked, I believe the Gunnar Nelson interview had 1,800 hits, and that is simply fantastic. And obviously a lot of people aren't going to be listening to this or the whole way through because it's not video. So I promise that I hope to invest in video technology, that I can do this sort of things myself more regularly and interview fighters, because video content is most definitely the way forward. So until then, hopefully I will see you December 1st in Liverpool for Cage Contender. It is all about saving the money together. And if not, I will most definitely be in the February card. And if I can swing it off work, I will of course be at the Helix on the 31st of December to hopefully see Conor McGregor defend his featherweight belt against Jim Ehlers. I'm not too sure how to pronounce. Hopefully it'll be an absolutely amazing night for Irish MMA if Chris Fields gets to defend his belt, and of course if Cathal Pendred gets his shot. 3 world champions, all from a small gym on the Long Mile Road. Irish MMA really has come a long way, but over the next couple of years it only can get better.